In 2008, Scarlet Keeling, a young girl from England, traveled to India with her family for what was supposed to be an exciting vacation. It was Scarlett's first trip outside of England, and she was eager to explore a new country. Unfortunately, what began as an adventure soon turned into a tragic nightmare. Scarlet Keeling was born in July 1992 in England and was the daughter of Fiona and Richard Keeling, who had separated when she was very young. Fiona, a single mother, raised Scarlet alongside her 8 other children, from 5 different men, with each father contributing to a fragmented family dynamic. The family's financial struggles were constant, relying mostly on government assistance to make ends meet. Her mother Fiona faced numerous challenges while raising her children. Struggling to make ends meet, she found herself unable to pay the rent for the home where she and her kids lived. Eventually, the landlord evicted the family, leaving them with no place to go. In an effort to keep her children off the streets, she came up with an unconventional solution. She moved the family into an old abandoned caravan, using it as their makeshift home. Later they moved to a modest home in Bradworthy, a small village in Devon. While the family had a more peaceful setting compared to before, they continued to face difficulties. Neighbors often described them as quiet and non-disruptive, with Fiona's children being well-mannered and well-kept. Fiona made a conscious effort to shield her children from alcohol and substances, but as a single mother caring for 9 kids, this proved to be a difficult task. As her older children reached their teenage years, they began experimenting with drinking. They also often attended parties where substances were consumed. Scarlett, her teenage daughter of 15, was known for smoking frequently. She used to play the saxophone and had dreams of joining a band. She was described by friends as a cheerful and ambitious girl. In 2007, her mother Fiona met Robert Clark, a man who became a significant part of her life. Their relationship grew quickly, and by November, Robert invited Fiona and her children to join him for a holiday in India. They planned to spend 6 months in the country, specifically in Goa, a place Robert was familiar with after multiple visits. For Fiona and her children, this trip would be their first time leaving England, and they were thrilled by the idea of exploring a new country. Fiona's eldest son, however, did not wish to accompany the family on their trip to India, and he decided to stay behind in England. This was not a major issue for the rest of the family, and they continued with their travel plans without much disruption. Upon arriving in India, they initially settled in Anjuna, Goa, which is known for attracting numerous tourists. The family was enchanted by the location and enjoyed the new experiences it offered. After spending some time exploring Anjuna, Robert suggested they visit another state of India called Karnataka. In early February 2008, they planned to head there. The drive from Goa to Karnataka was quite long, over 5 hours by car. As they began preparing for the journey, Scarlett told her mother that she didn't want to come along. She expressed her desire to stay in Anjuna, as she was enjoying herself there. She had also met someone she was fond of, a 25-year-old tourist guide named Julio Lobo, who had been working in the Goa area for a few years. Julio had become Scarlett's friend, taking her on various trips, and she felt comfortable and happy in his company. Fiona was initially hesitant and concerned, but Scarlett's insistence eventually convinced her mother to let her stay behind in Anjuna, where she would live at Julio's house for the time being. Afterward, Fiona and the family made their way to the state of Karnataka, stopping in the coastal town of Gokarna. The plan was for Scarlett to join them there after spending a few more days in Anjuna. True to the agreement, Scarlett went to Gokarna after a few days and spent some time with her family. However, as the days passed, Scarlett once again expressed a strong desire to return to Anjuna. She wanted to attend a large party planned for February 14th, which she was excited about. Fiona was hesitant to let her go, but she ultimately agreed to let Scarlett return to Anjuna for the event. Once back in Anjuna, Scarlett continued spending time with Julio Lobo, the tour guide she had become close to. During the day, she assisted with distributing promotional pamphlets to tourists, and at night, she participated in the tours Julio led. Additionally, She took up work as a waitress on boats to earn some extra money. However, the family's situation was about to change. Fiona received news that her eldest son, who had stayed behind in England, had suffered a serious accident. And Fiona decided to return to England to be with him. On February 17th, Fiona called Scarlett to let her know about the accident and to discuss plans for her return to England. They agreed that Scarlett would meet them in Gokarna on February 19th, and from there, they would travel back together. Scarlett, wanting to make the most of her remaining time in Anjuna, invited Julio and a new friend, Ruby, to join her for one last outing around the city before she had to leave. On the morning of February 18, 2008, Scarlet Keeling's lifeless body was discovered partially clothed, floating in the waters off Anjuna Beach. Local authorities were notified and quickly sent her body for examination. Initially, the authorities suggested that Scarlett had drowned after overdosing while swimming. They reported no visible signs of trauma and quickly closed the case, attributing her death to an accidental drowning. Fiona, who was in Karnataka at the time, more than 124 miles away, immediately rushed to Anjuna upon hearing the devastating news about her daughter's death. Upon arriving, she strongly disputed the official explanation provided by the Indian authorities. Fiona was convinced that her daughter's death was not an accident and demanded that a second autopsy be carried out. She spent over a month relentlessly urging Indian officials to reopen the investigation. When she was finally granted access to photographs of Scarlett's body, Fiona noticed disturbing evidence of a brutal attack, particularly in her daughter's private areas. It became clear to her that Scarlett had been the victim of a crime, not a tragic accident. After much pressure, the authorities agreed to conduct a second autopsy. Meanwhile, Fiona, refusing to rely solely on the local police, took matters into her own hands. Determined to find the truth, she began her own search for clues. With the help of her partner and children, Fiona scoured the area around Anjuna Beach, speaking to locals and trying to uncover any information. During this search, Fiona made a startling discovery of Scarlett's shirt, pants, and shoes which were found abandoned in a forest near the beach. This suggests that Scarlett had been dragged into the forest, where she was attacked before her body was discarded into the sea. In March 2008, the results of the second autopsy on Scarlet Keeling's body were made public. The report revealed that Scarlett had suffered 50 injuries, with the majority concentrated on her private areas. It was confirmed that she had been brutally essayed. The toxicology report also found traces of several unlawful substances in her system. It was only after the second autopsy that Indian authorities began to treat the case as a potential crime rather than an accidental drowning. Amid the investigation, a crucial witness came forward, an Englishman named Michael Mannion, who had been on Anjuna Beach the night of the incident. Michael recounted seeing Scarlett stumbling along the beach, appearing disoriented before she collapsed and could no longer get up. At the time, around 3 a.m., Michael was sitting at a bar along the beach. He said that Scarlett remained on the ground for several minutes before the bar owner approached her and helped her stand. Afterward, Scarlett entered the bar, and Michael observed that she seemed very drunk and had difficulty communicating. Scarlett sat at a table and soon after, a group of men approached her. Michael intervened, telling them that she was unwell and needed to be left alone. The men respected this and moved away. Later, Scarlett got up and relocated to a different table across the room. Michael lost sight of her briefly, but when he saw her again, she was accompanied by 2 Indian men. Michael claimed that Scarlett spent about an hour with them, during which they appeared to be using unlawful substances. She then left the bar with the 2 men. Michael continued drinking for a while and then decided to leave. When he went to the parking area to retrieve his scooter, he saw one of the men on top of Scarlett, who was lying on the ground. Michael shouted at them to stop, but Scarlett did not respond, leading him to believe the encounter was consensual. Feeling uncertain, Michael then left the scene on his scooter. In March 2008, Indian authorities arrested 2 men in connection with the crime: 28-year-old Samson D'Souza and 39-year-old Placido Carvalho. Goa was a Portuguese colony for over 450 years, which is why many residents still have Portuguese surnames, including the suspects in this case. The two men were formally charged in June 2008. However, it wasn't until March 2010 that the trial against them began. During the proceedings, more than 30 witnesses testified, including Michael, who had seen Scarlett on the night of her death. Scarlett's friend Ruby also testified, as she was with her in the hours leading up to the tragic event. While their testimonies helped create a timeline of the events, many witnesses were intoxicated that night, making their recollections unclear and the chronology difficult to piece together. Julio Lobo, the tour guide who had befriended Scarlett and offered her a place to stay, also gave testimony. He shared that Scarlett had invited him to join her and Ruby, but that night he felt unwell and decided to stay home. Julio expressed that if he had accompanied the girls, Scarlett might still be alive today. When questioned about his relationship with Scarlett, Julio admitted they had a casual relationship but clarified that it was not serious. In 2012, Michael returned to England and was later called to testify again in the ongoing trial. However, he refused, citing threats to his life if he were to return to Goa. As a result, his earlier testimony was dismissed by the court as irrelevant, which had a significant impact on the case, since Michael's account had been one of the most crucial pieces of evidence. Fiona called Michael a coward for not returning to give his testimony and criticized him for not taking action when he saw one of the men on top of her daughter, instead of simply yelling and leaving the scene. In an attempt to gather more information, Indian authorities sent a team to England to record Michael's statement. Despite their efforts, the court decided it would not accept any new testimony from him. However, the trip to England uncovered new details. Michael revealed that he and Samson D'Souza had been friends, and that he had even stayed at Samson's home, where he lived with his French wife. On the night of Scarlett's death, Samson had been working as a waiter at the same bar where Michael had been drinking, and where Scarlett was last seen. Michael claimed that he was horrified when he witnessed his friend attacking Scarlett. He said that when he attempted to intervene, he was threatened by Samson and the other man, and fearing for his own safety, he chose to leave the scene. The defense for Samson and Placido later introduced a diary that they claimed belonged to Scarlett. The diary contained entries where Scarlett wrote about feeling sad and dissatisfied with her life. She also expressed feelings of shame regarding her actions in Anjuna. The defense argued that these writings were evidence of Scarlett's self-destructive tendencies, suggesting that she may have taken her own life, rather than being the victim of a crime. The case against Samson D'Souza and Placido Carvalho was delayed for over 8 years. Finally, in September 2016, the trial commenced. However, the two men were acquitted due to insufficient evidence. Fiona was devastated by the ruling and accused the police and the court of corruption. Determined to continue fighting for justice, she vowed not to let her daughter's case be forgotten. In February 2017, Fiona successfully appealed to the Supreme Court of India, which led to a new trial. During this trial, additional witnesses were called to testify, including Murli Sagar, a bouncer from the bar where Scarlett had been before her death. Murli stated that he had seen Scarlett staggering along the beach at around 3 a.m. He recognized her and knew that she was staying at Julio Lobo's house. Scarlett had asked Murli if he could take her to Julio's house at 5 a.m., and he agreed. However, when the time came, Samson appeared and told Murli to leave, claiming he would look after Scarlett. Murli described Samson's tone as threatening. Samson and Placido had deliberately provided substances to Scarlett, even though she was already intoxicated, with the intention of exploiting her. Finally, in July 2019, the Supreme Court of India convicted Samson D'Souza of all charges related to the death of Scarlet Keeling. Although Placido Carvalho, who was initially implicated as an accomplice, had his charges dropped and was acquitted. Samson was sentenced to 10 years in prison with hard labor. Fiona expressed that while the sentence was not sufficient, it was better than seeing Samson walk free. After more than 11 years of legal battles and emotional turmoil, Fiona felt some degree of justice had been achieved for her daughter. The case sparked significant controversy, particularly regarding Fiona's parenting. Robert Clark, Fiona's boyfriend at the time, gave an interview in which he criticized her as a mother. He claimed that Scarlett had used substances in front of her younger siblings and that Fiona allowed her daughter to behave recklessly. According to Robert, by the second month of their stay in India, the family had exhausted all their funds on alcohol and substances, even reaching a point where they went hungry in the country. In 2012, Scarlett's story was made into a film titled Anjuna Beach. The film faced backlash from Goa's local authorities, who feared it would harm the region's reputation as a tourist destination. Scarlett's family lawyer also criticized the film, as the producer had not consulted with the family before making it. Scarlett was only laid to rest in 2012, 4 years after her death. The delay was due to Indian authorities holding onto her body throughout the long investigation. Eventually, she was buried on the family's modest property in a small ceremony, attended by friends and family. Scarlett's tragic death sparked a long battle for justice, but in the end, it was her mother's relentless determination that ensured justice was served. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more true crime content. See you next time.